Let's get chilly. Hello and welcome back to Let's Chill, the official, unofficial Minnesota Wind Chill, Minnesota Strike podcast. I'm Jeff.
I'm Jay.
And I'm Kane.
And tonight is our super special Triple P playoff preview podcast. Hopefully my podcast mic hits all those plosives and you can hear all those nice P's in your ears. But
hoping that your noise canceling headphones are just blasting your eardrums right now.
we're hosting our own little whiteout here tonight on the pod. If you're watching, just I don't know. I'm not wearing wind chill shirt, but we got a little whiteout going on. Fun fact, before we get into it, I've never been to a wind chill whiteout game. They host it like one every year. I've never been. It always lands on a day that I can't go for one reason or another, and so I've never experienced it. What's it
Bad
like?
day to have the yum yum truck or whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Sizzling wagon.
Dude, that
A
sizzling
little bit of
wagon's the
barbecue
best
sauce
one.
goes a long way, but it's a good vibe usually. Looks like a snowstorm.
It always is. All right. Well, before we get to the playoffs, big weekend this previous weekend with the UFA playoffs. We're definitely going to cover what happened, even though Minnesota didn't play. And of course, we're going to spend a majority of the time previewing the Minnesota versus, spoiler alert, Madison Radicals game, the Central Division Championship coming up on August 10th. Before we do that, as you know, we always do, I'm going to share my screen and do some stall count trivia. I only have two questions for tonight. And honestly, I'll be honest, I wasn't super like feeling it. So the questions aren't like the best, but we're going to go for it. So first question, when was the last time the Empire were not in the playoffs? A, they've always made the playoffs. They've always have made the playoffs. That's funny. B, 2015, C, 2016, or D, 2017.
Oh, 2017. I'll go super early, super recent.
I want to say it's 2015.
Okay, and the answer is 2017.
Yes.
That was the only year they had a losing record. They've had one season where they had a 500 record. Otherwise, they've had winning records every other season. So, and I was curious, like I was going to phrase this question differently, but the Empire did make playoffs this year. Let's be clear. Again, maybe spoiling a little bit of the preview, but like they are out. They will not win the championship this year. They're out of the playoffs, which is exciting. Next question. Here's a real random one. This is kind of in the spirit of the Olympics. Last week, 4 Minnesota wind chill players. Only one of them is rostered, so you might only recognize one of their names. One rostered wind chill player won the Whiff Diff Junior Championships. Who did they beat for first place? Italy, France, Great Britain, or Japan?
Japan.
I'm going to say Great Britain.
It was France. Again, it's kind of spirit of the Olympics. Olympics being held in Paris. I have my speaker notes here. I know I'm still sharing my screen so you can maybe see that. Those players were Thomas Schopp, Micah Davis, Ryan Dussert, and Ellis Newhouse. We know Micah Davis was a previous flag bearer. I believe he's still a practice player. Ryan Dussert and Ellis Newhouse. I don't know much about them, but I know they are within the wind chill system. They're up and coming. It's I think a U20 team. So these are all young guys coming up. So really cool to see them win gold on the international stage at Whiff Diff Championship. So congratulations, you four. Can't wait to see you back at Seafoam Stadium.
And we would love to get you on the pod sometime.
Heck yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd love to hear about just playing again. Like now, I've been in Olympics mode the last week or so now, last couple of days. But I'd love to hear about like beating, like playing against international teams and just like what is that like? Different styles of play and just the how the sport kind of transcends nations. All that good romantic stuff we talk about with sports. But shall we stick with our own Minnesota wind chill? Let's just get into kind of the playoff preview. Let's get into the meat of this conversation. The Minnesota wind chill are going to host the Madison Radicals at Seafoam Stadium for the Central Division Championship game. That's going to be a super exciting matchup.
Yeah, I remember last year it was against Indy last year, right?
Mhm.
That was like a really exciting one. I say like I don't remember who it was, but I do remember. Um, I don't remember the last time it's been against Madison. I know we have it here that they have not been to the playoffs since 2018. I don't know if we've ever hosted a Central Division championship against them. So this could be a very historic matchup.
So I know we've never hosted. Last year was our our first time hosting a championship game, and I believe I saw on the Winchell's Instagram post. I didn't fact check this, but I do believe them. I believe this is the first time they've met in the playoffs, or maybe the Central Division Championship. Maybe that's what it was. It was kind of a generically worded first time we meet in the Central Division Championship post. Um, so yeah, like this might be a first time ever matchup for these two teams. And like again, how appropriate that's like a border battle rival matchup. Of course, Madison is just coming off of their own kind of different rival matchup with Chicago, narrowly beating them, and they're ready. Like they've got some fire under their butts, and they've got a week of rest. This is going to be like down to the wire, I think. It always is.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of more interesting things about Madison in the playoffs. So like Kane said, they haven't been in the playoffs since 2018. Um, but also this was their second time ever facing Chicago in the playoffs.
Hmm.
The first time they faced each other was in 2013.
Wow.
Sorry. Yeah, and that was the Chicago Wildfire, I believe. So this is their first time ever technically facing the Union in the playoffs, which I think is super cool. They beat them both times, and the Madison Radicals posted that with that win over Chicago, they actually moved to 8-0 in the playoffs against Central Division teams. They have never lost against the Central Division team in the playoffs.
Wow. That's a stat. That's a stat. I wish I had that
So
on stall count trivia.
yeah, I saw that I think on Twitter the other day. So that's awesome. Again, they haven't always won a championship weekend, but they have never lost a playoff game to Central Division team. So not till this year at least.
I think I think the Madison Radicals, wow, forgetting their name, sorry, um, are very similar in a lot of regards to the Green Bay Packers. I mean, first of all, they're like founding members of their respective league. Like they are some of the most historic, iconic teams in their league. And like they are perpetually contenders. Or maybe not contenders, but they're perpetually good. And again, every team has their ebbs and flows, but like when they're good, they are good. And like it's hard to stop them. Madison going 8-0 against the Central Division. It's like once they're in the playoffs, it's hard to slow them down. And again, I'm just going off the stat that I didn't even know until just now. But I just kind of think about the Packers too. It's just like, the thorn in the side of the Vikings and the Radicals. It's like every single game, no matter what, is always down to the wire. It feels like with that team. And the fans it's a great like rivalry. Just like this historic team, historic playoff record. And yeah, like hopefully we beat that, just next week. Like I'm looking forward to that.
Well, like
No,
2 weeks.
Well, I mean, by now it'll be
not
a
this
week.
weekend, but next weekend.
On
Yeah,
August 10th.
August 10th.
We'll see you there. We will see.
Yeah. And
So, oh, go ahead.
I think it's interesting how you keep talking about how, it's always down to the wire. And it always really does feel like it's down to the wire. But this season in particular, it wasn't really. The two wins they had over Madison this season, like they played them twice this season so far, was 21-17 and 22-17. So like those are 4 and 5. Like those are not like super big blowouts, but those aren't close games. And yet they still felt really tight.
Yeah. I think both teams play each other really well historically and this season included. Right, like regardless of the final outcome, it's never like one team is stomping the other. It feels like no one's ever really controlling the field and dominated. They have their ebbs and flows, go back and forth. Yeah. I didn't have the exact stats, like an interesting part. So yeah, the Winchell swept the regular season against the Radicals 2-0. But both games, it was interesting. They held Madison to 17 points on both games, and they only won. Their difference was by one, or like they scored 21 and 22 points. But the stats were really kind of all over the place. I was hoping for like, oh wow, the one at home was their best, lowest turnover game, and they had so many hucks, and the one on the road was clearly their worst red zone conversion, like anything like that. I was trying to find some patterns, and we can definitely look at the stats and find patterns. But I think what my takeaway was that the games themselves, the stats were fairly in the middle. One game, um, I don't remember which one, but one game had slightly better offense, one game had slightly better defense, but really it wasn't significant. It wasn't to the point of like, oh yeah, at home against Madison, they're way better at offense, or they really stopped them on defense. So I think that kind of goes to what we're saying is like they play each other really well. It's not like they swing one way or the other dramatically, and we know we need to focus on this. Like it's all across the board.
I think honestly what it comes down to is because these teams are almost so close that it comes down to not which system is better, but whose players can win their matchups more consistently.
Mm.
And maybe that means committing less turnovers. Maybe that's what winning your matchup means. Maybe it means completing more hucks and or completing the end zone, right?
Mhm.
But you can't really point to one like strategic adjustment they have to make because both of these systems are just kind of firing how they should be. It's just that they're so matched up against each other. And so that's why the point differential on those games, the 21-17 and 22-17, I mean, those are margins that can be made up, right? A three,
Right.
4, 5 point difference is doable up
Mhm.
until halfway through the fourth, right? And then, obviously it tapers off the further you go. And so I think when it comes to Madison, you really have to be able to push yourselves all the way through those 4 quarters. And this year we've historically proven that we've done that. So
Yeah, I will point out one thing that I did note on our agenda was that both these games against Madison in the regular season were they tended to have more turnovers. Again, not like they weren't the highest turnover games, but they were up there of the most high turnover games for Minnesota. And I suppose I should have looked at Madison too. I completely failed to flip the coin there and see how they did against Madison. But yeah, like Minnesota will definitely need to control the disc. They'll need to control the field, and they'll need to be smart. Like whatever that means, whatever that looks like, we could talk about the nitty gritty. We absolutely can. Um, but that's gonna be key is limiting turnovers. I think we say this every time, but like you have to keep the disc if you have the disc. You can't afford to give up break points because against this Madison team, who we know it comes down to the wire, and they're coming off a major win against the Chicago Union. Like that for them, that's a good victory. That's also a moral victory. Like, hey, we can keep up with this even in double overtime. We are we can win, right? Like they aren't tired. They won that out. So Minnesota really has to be clean on offense.
absolutely. And we're definitely gonna be looking to the depth of the roster. I'm sure Madison will be as well. I think that segues nicely into Jay's preview of some players to watch for this upcoming matchup.
Yeah. Um, yeah, let's start off. I don't want to start with the first one
Yeah.
or two. I want to start with the Minnesota guys on this list. Um, Sam Berglund has not played very many games this season. And as far as I'm concerned, he's playing in the playoffs.
So it
I
sounds
would
like
I would assume
TBD.
he would be. Um, and we we talk about Sam Berglund like he's had got tons of experience in the UFA, like he's one of the best players on the team, but in reality, he's barely played more than one season.
Mhm.
And I want to say like his experience in Ultimate outside of the UFA has kind of done him a lot of service coming into this season because even though he's missed a lot of games, I am more comfortable having Sam Berglund on the roster than off the roster. Anytime Sam Berglund's on that D line, anytime he's pulling, anytime he's picking up a dropped pass to, huck it into the end zone, I'm thinking that's a reliable player. So even though we haven't seen him a ton this season, I think this game he's going to show up and do the Sam Berglund that we saw last year and that we have seen so far this season.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's a sense about Sam Bergman where he feels like a veteran, even though he's not. Like, and again, like age wise, like you maybe attribute it to him being older than just college age. But yeah, the way he plays and the way he commands the field and commands the team, he's got a veteran presence about him, which helps.
Sam, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the pod sometime.
100%. Another player, Tristan Vandy Mortel. Since Tristan Vandy Mortel has swapped to D-line this season, Minnesota's D-line has been amazing. I mean, the D-line completion percentage, I'm pretty sure, went up after he swapped. And like they just looked better. They looked more cohesive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
I
always.
think.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that he seems to be kind of the linchpin piece that keeps a lot of the Minnesota's play running. Um, I wouldn't even say necessarily on defense, although obviously you point to that stat, but I would say on offense or defense, he just brings a certain type of play making like uniqueness. He's like such a utility player, and he's just doing so much every point that it's almost hard to point out like what he's good at because he's doing so much.
Yeah, I mean, every time he's on the field, like we've talked about TDT Tristan VDM, TVDM. Have not said that one out loud. Every time we talk about him on the podcast, like I think it's almost always in high praise, as we talk about most of these players, I suppose. But there's this quality about him where he is ever present on the field. He's a flex player, and he has glued this team together for the last couple seasons now. And yeah, like why not? Why not this postseason too?
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, I think comparatively to last season, he's had almost a quieter season, a less filled season, but he has been like silently very good. Like he's been a good rotation handler. He's slotted onto the defense where, I mean, honestly, you don't make as big of an impact on the defense as you do on offense scores wise. And he's still like a name that we keep bringing up. We see him making good plays and doing well on the defensive line.
I think it's largely in part like because the turnover has been less this year, or like last season, there were so many times where we did not have many handlers, and he had to step up as like QB1. And again, like now this season, it's like, why would he be? Because we have Josh Clayton, we have Will Brandt, we have Sam Berglund. I mean, I guess we don't have Sam Berglund this season. We haven't, but yeah, like he has had to fill in so many different roles, cutting, handling, everything last season. And this year, I think we've been able to kind of beef up our roster, and now he's been able to almost kind of play a more secondary role rather than taking that spotlight out of pure necessity. Um, and yeah, his stat sheet reflects it, but I don't think that, as you were saying, Jay, I don't think that reflects who he is as a player. Like he has had a worse season, just a happenstance he has. But yeah, still a very impactful player.
Yeah, then the third Minnesota wind chill guy I wanted to bring up was Brandon Mattis. Um, I mean, we could talk about Mattis all day long. Every season he's played in, he's made a huge impact. But this year, he looks like he's playing a completely different game. Every play, he looks hungrier than usual. He's hustling for discs. He's laying out for blocks more frequently. It, I mean, Brandon Mattis looks like he wants to win championship weekend this year more than ever. And I think that's scary for other teams.
Do we is he juicing, do we think?
Bro, what?
Bro,
Is there
I think
protocol for that in UFA?
I think it's emblematic of just the team. Like again, now that they made it the championship weekend last year, now that question is gone. It's erased from their minds. Can we even do it? How can we get there? Like they still have to kind of ask those questions every season, but now they don't have to prove it. They don't have to prove it to themselves. They don't have to prove it to anybody else. So now Mattis is representing the entire team of how hungry they are, and they want to win. dang it. They know they can do it. Now the next step is to win it. And yeah, I think he's leading the charge, like just emotionally, if not physically, and by virtue of his leadership. Okay, can I transition to the players to watch for Madison Radicals?
Yes.
I just want to add one. I'll let you take the two that you added, but I'm going to add one to the list really fast. Mitchell McCarthy is a defender for the Madison Radicals, and his name popped up a good amount among both UFA, like Twitter, but also some Winchell players during the game against the Chicago Union. He had a pretty quiet game against the Union. He had 2 assists, 3 blocks, which is not quiet. Like 2 assists and 3 blocks is good. He had a completion rate of 100%, 13 out of 13, and a huck rate of 100%. That's a relatively quiet game, but for him, he like to put his season stats into context. He had 21 assists, and again, he had 2 last week. And then he has 13 blocks in the season. Last week he had 3. So it's pretty on par, if not maybe, I guess I can do the math, but maybe slightly elevated compared to his per game for the regular season. Just another name that we have not brought up on the podcast before, kind of a quieter name that I don't think any of us really had recognized before. I'm more just pointing him out. He's a player to watch. I'm curious to see if he continues to rack up those 3 blocks. Like he has a lot of blocks on his stat sheet this year. Let's see if he can make an impact, or hopefully he doesn't, but let's see if he does make an impact on defense. If he transitions to that handler role, he's a handler on defense. So just kind of see how Minnesota works around him, especially on a turnover. I know a couple people have pointed out his wind up on the huck is very long. They're like, can somebody please just hand block him? Like it takes him forever to wind up to huck it. So like, let's block that because we can. That's blockable. So I don't know. Just curious. Want to point that name out. Mitchell McCarthy. We'll see. We'll see what he does on defense against Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean 16 blocks because 13 regular season, 3 in postseason. Quick maths. 16 blocks in a year is not a quiet year. Like that's a lot of blocks. It's not number 1 in the league, but that's top half of the league easily. So that he's definitely someone we should be looking out for.
You can go ahead and take the rest. I just want to add that one to
All right.
get it going.
I think first and foremost, someone to watch on the Radicals is Gabe Vordick. We've mentioned him briefly. Since we've mentioned him, he has slowed down a little bit in the regular season. I think he wasn't as eccentric in the postseason, but he had 3 goals. Against the Union. But he was for a while my favorite to win Rookie of the Year. He has been playing ridiculously well. He is everywhere on the field. Anytime a play doesn't look like it's going to happen, it's almost like Gabe Vordick is there to make it happen. He can get open in ways, he sees the field and reads it and can get open in ways where defenders aren't expecting him to. And I think that if Minnesota wants to shut down the Radicals, they need to put, defender 1 on Gabe Vordick. Gabe Vordick needs to be like their primary target because he's going to be what kills them. It's not going to be a knife in the back. It's going to be the poison that is Gabe Vordick doing amazing things.
Now, I know you're talking about Gabe Vordick. I'm more just illustrating. Are you talking about Gabe Vordick? Or are you talking about Anthony Gutowski? Because you basically just described Gutowski as well, who is like just a freaking predator in the end zone. Yeah, I think Gutowski too can like ring in those discs and like make plays happen that you never see coming. And that's like a scary 1-2 combination to have. You can't, because like if you cover Vordick, then you leave Gutowski open. If you're covering Gutowski, leave Vordick open. I think the only like hope for the Winchell is I think they are on different lines. Like Gutowski is primarily an offensive player, and I believe they're both offensive players. Just kidding. So yeah, hopefully they play on different lines, but if they play on the same line, it's like you've got to kind of choose. It's gonna be hard to split. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I'll kind of leave it at that. But they're both both dangerous threats in the end zone or just deep.
Yeah, I think part of that though is, Anthony Gutowski, he spends about a third of his time on defense, and Vortic plays mostly on offense. I think he's played one defensive point out of the almost 150 he's played this season. Um, Anthony Gutowski sort of is that knife in the back. When you see like he streaks down the field. Like he sees the open space and he gets to it. But Gabe Vortic, he sort of like sneaks his way into those spaces. Like when Anthony Gutowski gets open, you're like, crap, we left Gutowski open. But when Gabe Vortic gets open, it's like, wait, who was supposed to be covering Gabe Vortic in those situations?
Right.
Yeah, Gutowski is the knife in the back, but Gabe Vortic is definitely that poison that will, it'll kill you too,
One more.
Yeah, I got one more in me. Uh, Kai Marcus. I I don't Kai Marcus might be the best handler in the league if he didn't throw it away like every third throw. Uh Kai Marcus has a negative plus minus on the season with 35 assists and
Jeez.
2 goals. He has like 37 throwaways or something. Yeah, 37
Jeez.
throwaways and 2 drops. If Kai Marcus did not throw away a disc, he would be like number one in the league in handler. He would be the best handler in the league. Hyperbole, of course. Um, but this is interesting because Kai Marcus, Tim DeBile's not going to let him be throwing away the disc. Going up
Mhm.
against Minnesota, they're going to be talking about that. That they're going to be looking for that. That that's basically their weak point is how many turnovers they have. So that's what they're going to be practicing for. And I think Kai Marcus is not going to be throwing away the disc frequently. And I think that he's going to be super solid and be maybe the best handler in the league against Minnesota.
I'm definitely curious about that. Like, I hope so. Or rather, I hope that he plays his regular way and just tries to grip it and rip it. Um, I think when we've seen Kai Marcus play against Minnesota, and again, I don't have the game stats up, but I feel just anecdotally like that he does put on a good show. That generally speaking, he's pretty clean. He knows what he's doing to get around Minnesota's defense. Um, and I'm just like thinking out loud here. This is not a complete thought. I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm curious if Minnesota just tends to leave deep receivers open if their defense allows for more hucks. Because I think Kai Marcus likes to, yeah, like grip it and rip it, look deep when he can. And I'm just curious now if Minnesota leaves that option open, especially against like Gutowski or Gabe Vortic, pair that with Kai Marcus, since like that's a bad recipe. But do they do that? I guess. Like, what are you guys thinking about that?
See, here's the thing. I don't think there's any combination that they put together that is ideal for Minnesota. And I feel like the game plan for Minnesota has to come down to if you put somebody on Gutowski, they have to be winning that matchup.
Mhm.
If you put
Yeah.
somebody on Gabe Vortic, they have to be winning that matchup. You know what I mean? And obviously, yes, you always have to be winning the matchup with the person that you're on. But again, those guys thrive. They do so well on their star player status, right? Gutowski is like the ultimate highlight player this year. You gotta just be able to shut that down.
Yeah, I definitely think I agree. I think cutter defense will be more important than handler defense. I think. Um, I think Minnesota typically tries to limit handler defense, or rather, they try to limit handlers by playing a stronger handler defense. They love to double team. They love to sideline trap, and that usually works. But right against the Madison team, like let Kai Marcus make the errors. Let's not let Kutowski make the highlight play. Not don't leave him open. Leave Kai Marcus open. Almost.
Jeff, I think you would love my very first point and keys to the game.
Well, okay. As we transition, I should say, I think we should all. I don't know. Maybe not. I was thinking maybe we all give our own one key to the game, or I don't know, but you can
Let's do that at
let's see
the
how
end.
how fast
We'll
it
do it
takes. Yeah, I
briefly.
don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm just not trying to extend this episode too long, but Jay, take that first one.
Yeah. Like we were just saying, we want Kai Marcus, who does have a lot of throwaways, to be making the mistakes. And he
Mhm.
makes a lot when he's looking too deep too fast. So I think we need to make Madison look deep. We need to play not super tight to the handlers, but tight enough, and then play kind of a zone look. That's going to make them, throw it deep. If they're throwing deep and we have a good defensive coverage and the, big good safeties, then Kai Marcus is going to make those throws. Not just Kai Marcus, but Madison in general
Yeah.
will make those throws. I'm sorry to be putting all this on Kai Marcus. He's a great player. I love watching Kai Marcus play. Um, Madison will be making those throws, and they're going to be making those mistakes. Then I think that's where Madison has the hardest time. So if Minnesota can make Madison look deep, then I think that's a good way to win the game.
And it's interesting too because Minnesota doesn't throw a zone like at all. I don't know if I've ever seen them throw a zone. Maybe they'll force middle. I could see um, to try to limit some of that. But yeah, like I would be really curious to see if they do throw a zone. They do throw force middle, so I could see that. But yeah, I agree with everything you said. Also, my key to the game is going to be your number 3. So like you can keep going if you want. I'll just add. I'll say your number 3.
Yeah, I mean, basically my number 2 and my number 1 were pretty much the same, which was
Yeah.
throw that zone, get that poach look, make Madison, make mistakes, make them play dirty. That's what the D line needs to do. I said
Yeah.
D is for dirty. Um,
Oh, dirty dogs.
and then the second part of my number 1 was actually kind of my number 2 part to the key of the victory, which is hucking for Minnesota makes next to no sense strategically.
Mm.
I literally went and did the math. If Minnesota threw up a huck at every end of quarter situation, and they made 0 of those, and we could just take those off the stat because those had like no impact on their huck completion percentage, or they shouldn't really. Um, Minnesota's huck completion percentage is like 8% or 9% lower than their normal completion percentage. Actually, I have it on my phone. I can.
Mm.
So their huck completion percentage getting rid of end of quarter situations um is 69%. Nice.
Nice.
But their huck completion percentage without it is only 55. With that is 55%. And we know that not every one of those hucks is an end of quarter situation.
Right.
Minnesota's completion percentage is 92%. If you take
Mm.
hucks out of that stat, it's almost 95%. And like that might not seem like a big difference, but that's a big difference, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean every pass is going to count, and this is my key to the game is, and Jay, you have on here, stay chilly. Just like again, like we talked about earlier, you can't afford turnovers. You have to limit turnovers. And again, I don't know how good Madison's defense is, but like why risk it? Like they're going to call a timeout. They're going to take advantage of a turnover. Minnesota's offense historically is just weaker than their defense, I should say. Um, and so they need to focus on that. They need to make clean passes. They need to stay chilly. I think they need to rely on their primary handlers. Like look at Will Brandt, look at Josh Klain, make the passes that you can make. Why don't risk it. Stay chilly. Play your game that you play. Um, I guess I don't even have anything fancy to say to that. Just like fundamentals. That's a key to the game. Stay chilly, complete passes. I want to see fewer than 10 turnovers from Minnesota. I'm serious. I want to see single digit turnovers for the rest of the playoffs too. Because like for me, that's going to translate into championship weekend success too. We know how tough it is to get points back. We know how critical a turnover can be in a game. So I want to see them practice limiting turnovers against Madison so they can continue to execute that when they get to Salt Lake City.
Yeah, I'm just going through now the stats of like huck percentage comparatively for the teams throughout the season.
Mhm.
Minnesota's consistently in the lower half. And
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a bad thing to make to be hucking it, but you got to complete it. I feel like that's just you score by getting the disc in the end zone, and the other team scores when you don't do that. So catch the disc. I know it's more than that. I know. I'm being very what's the word?
Reductive.
Yes, that's the word. But I mean, realistically, if I had to like make a key to the game, I would say Minnesota's offense has to be just has to have a more calm, consistent identity. I feel like it has struggled over the last few years to build an identity. I mean, this is one thing we've been talking about historically is that Minnesota's offense isn't the greatest. And I feel like there aren't enough pieces now in our offense where we can start to establish a more refined system. And so I think Minnesota has to start leaning into those pieces and trusting that it can do that.
Yeah, I mean the pieces are there, like you said. Look
And
at
also catch the disc.
Yeah, right. Like again, you got Will Brandt, you got Gordon Larson, you got Noah Hansen, you got Josh Klein. All these, and those are just like the big star names that come to mind right away. But like, there's so many supports who are filling in this system that yeah, they can execute now. Okay. Any other thoughts, predictions, previews on Madison, Minnesota border battle championship division championship game? Okay. It's gonna be a fun game. Again, like the stats, or not the stats. What am I saying? Jeez. The fans in the stands are gonna like we know even a regular season matchup, like a ton of Radicals fans show up. I'm curious for the Central Division game. Like honestly, at Seafoam Stadium, there's that across the field, there's that other those other bleachers. I wonder how full those are gonna be. Because they're already pretty packed. And now this is the biggest game these two teams have played against each other. I'm freaking pumped. We have to show up. We gotta be loud. We gotta go nuts. Uh, it's gonna be awesome. All right, I want to talk about league news. Really, all I have is the winners of the first round of playoffs. As we know, we can just go right away. Madison Radicals beat Chicago Union in double overtime. Kane, you are pumped about this.
I love to see Chicago lose, and I love playoff frisbee. It is so exciting because every turnover means something.
Yeah.
And oh, this game was literally down to the wire, like as much as you can get, right? The double overtime, really just an incredible game. And from both teams. I mean, obviously I got to give Chicago credit. I'll make fun of them all day long, but like it was a really, really good game. And it made me kind of nervous for this upcoming matchup. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I didn't watch any of the playoff games this weekend, so I can't speak to too much this weekend. So I'm gonna let you guys take most of the segment. But yes, I will say, like the last couple seasons, we know Madison has been kind of weak. We know that they've like been building up and they've been like competitive, but not threats. And to see the results of that game, like I was checking on my phone and I was like, oh, overtime. That's pretty exciting. I didn't expect that. And then double overtime, like, okay, so the Union's got it now. Like double overtime, Union's gonna clean it up. And to see that the Radicals, and like granted they were at home, not that that means a ton, but like that gives you a bit of a boost. Like, I don't know, that's scary. And yeah, like I said, this is gonna be a tighter game than what we've seen, and we've already had some pretty tight games um, in the regular season against the Radicals. So, yeah, I'll let you two take it the rest away. I'll preview them, and if you guys want to talk about them, you can. The
Yeah.
Boston Glory knocked out the New York Empire. Again, I don't remember when the last time was, but the New York Empire are not playing for the championship to be the champion in like at least 3 or 4 seasons now, if not longer than that. Um, which opens up the door for just about any team to take it now. Now you don't have to take over New York. It's anyone's league.
Yeah,
From
that
my
game
perspective,
was
go for it.
sorry. Yeah, that game was terrifying to watch. That was a like a butt clencher of a game, if I'm being completely honest. Uh
Bro,
I'm serious.
right when I take a
Uh,
drink.
I did not know which team I was rooting for going into that game. Like part of me wanted the Empire to lose just because like I don't want them to win at all. But also
Yeah.
part of me wanted the Empire to win because like the Empire are good. They beat Minnesota, you know. If they could three-peat, like that would be
Yeah.
super impressive. So like, part of me wants to see a dynasty, see greatness. But also part of me is like, come on, man, it's New York Empire. They gotta lose, right? Uh it was a fun game. It was an exciting game. It basically came down to a buzzer beater. So,
And it was Jeff Babbitt, wasn't it?
yep, of course it was Jeff
Of course
Babbitt.
it was. Like we can't leave that major piece out. Like that's pretty cool, That writes itself. Kane, you have something to say with that?
Honestly, no. I think that game was the one I was least excited for, just because I mean, I don't really care about either of those two teams. I was cheering for Boston. I was cheering against New York because I'm not a huge
Yeah.
fan of their jerseys. But that's neither here nor there.
Okay, fair. Seattle Cascades beat the Oakland Spiders, so they'll be playing Salt Lake Shred for the West Division Championship game.
Yeah, honestly, I'm just gonna talk about the other one with this one. The Carolina Flyers beat the Austin Soul. Honestly, both of these two games, did either of you two watch them?
Nope.
I watched the Carolina game.
The Carolina game especially, but also the Seattle game, they didn't feel that close. They felt pretty one-sided throughout. And then as you entered the fourth quarter, again, especially with the Carolina game, it became pretty apparent which team was going to win. So it'll be exciting next weekend to see their matchups, but not a lot to talk about from this weekend.
Yeah. I will say just one thing. I've brought it up a couple times. I just have to keep reminding all of our listeners that Noah Hansen predicted that the Seattle Cascades are making championship weekend. He didn't predict them to be championships, but he said they're going to the Final Four, and they're one win away from doing so. Everyone, again, not everyone, maybe I just laughed, but fun storyline. Have to keep bringing it up every week that they advance.
He also predicted Carolina, DC, and Minnesota. And
He
Carolina
might clean
advanced.
sweep.
Yeah, he honestly might like clean sweep this. Also, I do want to point out that our teams, we all have our one team outside of the Central.
Yeah.
Mine is the Flyers, Kane's is DC, and Jeff's is the Seattle Cascades. So like
Go.
it is theoretically possible we have our four favorite teams heading into championship weekend.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Um, I do want to say I am sad to see Austin lose.
Only
Kane
because of
was
last year, or
partially because of last year, because those guys were cool. Those guys were fun. I am obviously cheering for, yeah, I got the hat too. I was obviously cheering for Carolina, but it was like a bittersweet win. Um, in that game, Carolina took a 2-goal lead in the first quarter, and then they were even basically until the end of the third. Like they had a 2-goal lead at the end of the third, and then the fourth quarter, the wheels just fell off for Austin. Carolina outscored them 7-1. It was brutal in the fourth quarter. And honestly, fourth quarter is usually where Austin shines. So I was thinking going into the fourth quarter, I was actually like I was camping, so I didn't know the result of the game. Until I watched it later. Going into the fourth quarter, I straight up thought that like Austin was going to come back and clutch up and win it because
Yeah.
that's the kind of fourth quarter team they are. And it was the exact opposite of that. So it was kind of a bittersweet loss there.
All right, we have a lot of mailbag responses to get through today. We have 6, which is 6 more than we've had pretty much all season. I think we had like 2 at one point. So first of all, just want to remind people, mailbag is totally anonymous, and I'm going to share my screen so you can like truly see that. Like we don't even know who you are. You could be a Winchell player, you could be a coach, you could be a Chicago player, a fan. I don't know. Doesn't matter. I don't care. I just want to hear your responses. What we do is we ask some multiple choice questions, we ask some open-ended questions, and we just want to get your voices and your opinions on the podcast. We're gonna respond to some of these and talk about them. We do have 6 responses to get through, so we kind of gotta move a little quickly, but I also want to give this some time because we actually have mailbag to share. So I'm gonna share my screen here because some of these are pretty visual. Size wise, is that good? Do I need to zoom in or are we good to go?
I'd say go bigger.
A little bigger.
Definitely go bigger.
Go big
Oh,
or go home, baby.
did that not zoom in at all?
It didn't for me, no.
What's happening? Oh, is that too big?
It didn't do
It didn't
anything
it
for me.
didn't do anything for me.
All right. Well, I don't know what to do then.
Well, we'll just be visual with it with our voices.
All right. Well, this is a podcast anyway. Isn't it? Is it Control Plus?
You can just
Oh,
control scroll wheel.
Do you have a touchscreen, Jeff?
no.
Well, get a touchscreen. All right.
Oh, Control Scroll Wheel. Jay,
There
you're
it
clutch.
is.
All right. How's that? Better?
Fantastic.
All right. Okay, here we go. I'm not 60. All right. So the first question, the first four questions are pretty obvious. I think we can also answer ours. These are just who's going to make it to the championship weekend from each division. So what Central Division team will make it to championship weekend? 83.3% of you said the Wind Chill, and 16.7, one person said the Chicago Union. Unfortunately, the Chicago Union answer was completely wrong. And again, I just want to point out, I have no idea who it was. Individual responses are all anonymous, baby. So that might have been a Union player. But our predictions for Central Division Championship team, is it fair to say we all predict the Wind Chill are making it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
What West Division team will make it to championship weekend? Again, 5 people said the Shred, and 1 person said the Spiders. And again, the Spiders person was wrong right off the bat. Who do you guys predict going to championship weekend from the West?
I got the Cascades.
Okay.
I gotta see the Cascades as well.
I want to say the Cascades. I'm going to say the Shred. It's a boring answer, but I think it's one of those, I'll see it when I believe it kind of thing. But yeah, go Scades. Okay, now East Division. Again, we sent this out. Apparently, I didn't even think about this. We sent this out before last weekend happened, so everyone was making their predictions based on that. But honestly, I think that's more of an authentic answer. Like, this is who you thought was going to happen. 4 people said the Breeze are going to make it to the championship weekend. 2 people said the Empire, and nobody said Glory, which is interesting. Jay and Kane, your thoughts from the East?
I got the Breeze for sure.
It's got to be the Breeze.
I'm going to say the Breeze as well. They got home field advantage against the Glory. They're a good team.
I have them going all the way for sure this year. That's like
All right.
my final.
Okay, South Division. This is the most exciting. 50% of people, 3 people said the Hustle, 2 people said the Soul, and only 1 person predicted that the Flyers are going to championship weekend, which is very interesting. I agree. I think the Flyers are gonna take championship weekend.
That's a hard one. I want the Flyers to do it, but the Flyers playing at their peak, I think will go. But if they're not playing at their peak, I think the Hustle are going to be the ones.
I got the Hustle either way. Never count out Atlanta.
Nice. Okay, so
Before,
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
sorry, before we move on, I have the spreadsheet version of this pulled up.
Yeah.
The person who answered the Union is the same person who answered the Spiders, the Empire, and the Hustle. So they were wrong for 3 out of
my.
4. And also, completely honestly, the Hustle didn't even get a chance to make them wrong yet. So like if the Hustle lose this weekend, they would be the
Yep.
only person to be wrong 4 out of 4. Oh, like right after, like what I mean? Like it was completely possible for the Hustle to have. It wasn't
Yeah.
possible at all for the Hustle to lost. Like they were wrong on every game that they could be.
I really hope that they're listening to this. Shout out. Thank you so much for participating. Please participate in the next one as well, even though you got it all wrong.
But like your odds are probably better next time because
I mean,
there's less
statistically, they
teams.
are. Okay. These are the fans or the listeners, I should say, the listeners' biggest concerns and uncertainties for the Wind Chill at this point. I'm just going to read them off and we can address whichever ones we want. We have huck percentage, injury problems, completion rate, going all the way, defense capitalizing on break opportunities, and drops on offense, not being tight enough on defense, and low huck completion percentage.
I think right away I want to just touch on the huck completion percentage. Again, we brought that up earlier in the pod. Either make less attempts or get those down, and I think that also kind of goes into the other point of drops on offense. Again, just really cleaning up that offensive performance.
Yeah, and just rounding out the completion rate too, which is right in the middle of that. Like it all works together. It's all the same. maybe different stats, but it's really telling the same story. Jay, do you have
Yeah,
anything
I mean,
about this?
other than injury problems, sort of, kind of fizzling out 'cause it's the end of the season, so the roster that has been playing is going to be mostly the same. Um, and we kind of talked about how, Sam Berglund didn't play a ton this season, but he sort of has that, veteran mentality, that veteran aura about
Yep.
him because of it. Um, so yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Heck yeah. Okay. This next one, honestly, the answers for this one kind of made me upset. I'm not gonna reveal the answers yet. I want to hear our responses. So the question is, who's the team's MVP of the regular season? Jay.
I mean, this is a hard one, but I gotta give it to Gordon Larson, right?
Okay. Kane?
Yeah, I gotta go Garden Larson. I don't think it's that hard. Obviously, I want to give as much credit to all the players as I can, but I think he was the most valuable player.
Maybe I'm just taking the NFL approach here and just giving it to the quarterback, which honestly I hate. I hate that that's every year. But I gotta say Will Brandt. It's for me, it's like a no doubter. Like, so let me reveal the answers now. 50% said Bevon, which, like, sure, a couple years ago, absolutely. I mean, really, every year he's the perennial MVP favorite. But like this season, okay. Again, no hate to Bevon, love him, but wow. Two people did say Will Brandt, and one person wrote in Jordan Taylor, which I respect. I disagree with, but I respect that answer.
I could
I
see
was
if you're looking at the first half of the season, I could see JT, but if you're going for like the season as a whole,
Yeah.
I don't know. I understand the Will Brandt pick, but I don't know. I think Gordon Larson got that lock.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of stats, Will Brandt, in terms of Gordon Larson doesn't have as high of a plus minus as Bevon. He has a 38 compared to Bevon's 43. Um,
Jeez.
yeah, I mean Bevon is doing wild things. Um, but I mean Gordon Larson has 25 goals and so does Bevon. And I mean, in terms of receiving yards, Gordon Larson's got him beat by about 700. So like for the plus
Yeah.
minus isn't as high, but also Gordon Larson is just catching every disc. Like
But
he's
who's
got to be my
throwing them
MVP.
to him? Who's throwing them? And
Colin
who
Berry. All right.
get out of here? And how is he throwing them? In every single way you can against 15 defenders and your own team. And he's throwing high release backhands and he's throwing stupid crossfield hammers. Every time he has the frisbee, Will Brandt puts it in the end zone into Gordon Larson's hands. So maybe it's a shared MVP.
Maybe it's friends we made along the way.
Maybe the real
the,
MVP was the friends we made along the way.
the MVP is being able to say frisbee this season.
No, for real. The relief I feel every time I get to say frisbee.
Yeah, that's a real MVP right there.
Wait, okay, genuine question, time out. For you guys and the ultimate community as a whole, can we call it frizz? Or is that
That's
like
too far
okay,
for
okay.
now. I Frizz feels degrading, but I don't know
I will
why.
refrain then.
See, when you say frizz, all I can think of is like, please let this be a normal game of Ultimate. With the frizz? No way.
And it's just the guy from the Dallas Legion. You guys see that? The super fan who streaked on the field.
Did
you
It's
think
just
the
him
first
running on
streaker?
the field. Okay, he was clothed. He did have shorts on, but he definitely got like taken down by security. And it was a couple weeks ago. I think in the last regular season game at the Legion game. It was crazy.
That's awesome.
Incredible.
Okay, final. This is like I do this for all the mailbags. I just throw out just what else do you want us to talk about? Any additional comments, questions, or takes you want us to address in the podcast? Someone said pick your 20 for championship weekend. Right away, I'm gonna say no. It's gonna take too long. Um,
We'll
maybe
make a
we
post
can.
about it.
I'll say we can make a post about it. What we could say is there anyone you think should but won't, or anyone who will but shouldn't? Do you want to say? Do I do that at all? Because I think it's gonna be
Nah,
pretty
let's just do
standard.
like a starting seven on a post or something.
Sure. All right. Yeah. We'll put that off pod, but I like enthusiasm. We'll address it somehow, some way. You should interview a staff member and get their point of view of what it's like to volunteer for the team. Yeah, I've actually been thinking about getting a ref on the pod. That'd be a cool point of view. No, like all due respect, 100%. I'd love to get that perspective from a referee. I think a staff member would be right up there with that. Just a different
Yeah,
perspective.
I mean, especially, some of these people who have been volunteering for seasons, for a very long time, been with a team, they're not players, but they really do make the game day experience. And I feel like we don't give them enough credit.
I mean,
So
absolutely. And just like the real time clips that they put out, the social media posts, the fan experience, which this will kind of lead into our next one. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like the game day staff are the team behind the team for sure. It's really cool to see that going. So this next one then is highlight fan engagement as being the eighth defender. Confirmed by players, it really does help when the fans are loud during defensive points to help create chaos for the opposing offense. I will say, sometimes I watch a couple points from the end zone, just get a different perspective, chill out, throw a frisbee for a little bit. And yeah, like you can tell when the fans are in it and when they're not. Because I'll be texting you guys like, oh, do a defense chant or sometimes, and then you'll do it. There are times when the defense is like defense. It's like lame. It's like, okay, did you guys even do it? I can't even hear it. And there are times when it's like the whole stadium, like it's just boom, boom, and it's just crazy. And I hear that in the end zone, and I'm like, I get chills from the end zone. Um, and that's just my own perspective from a fan sitting in the end zone watching the game. It does it's a huge difference. It's super cool to hear that when you're not right in the middle of it.
I mean, yeah,
yeah,
you got to be loud.
and we know that Madison fans travel well,
Yeah,
especially to Minnesota and especially to
yeah.
Chicago. Um, but they're coming to Minnesota, and Madison's the team's coming to Minnesota, and the fans are coming with them. So we need to be louder than them. So show up to this game and be loud. Don't let anything stop your energy from being at its peak. I don't care if Minnesota goes down by 5, they will come back from 5 if we are loud
Yep.
enough. And I truly believe that.
No, heck yeah. Like that's what we brought. Like we started bringing noisemakers this season. We brought cowbell. We have drums, and like I think that's just like added our own energy to it. Like it helps. We're not just like screaming the whole time. Like we can just like bang on something that makes noise still. Like do that. Go ahead. Feel free to bring something or come stand on the fence with us. We always need someone else to take the drum for a minute or take a sign for a minute. Give us a relief. Like show up. It's so much fun when other people are on the fence with us. Just kind of creating that community and helping the team too. Yeah, it's super fun. Okay, finally, this one is not necessarily about championship weekend or playoffs or anything, but yeah, I think it's a fun topic to talk about really quick, and then we can expand on it later, maybe in the off season. But it says explain how moving teams work and free agency and how that works in the UFA. Um, you guys want to take that one on? I can answer it too, but
I honestly
uh,
don't know all the nitty gritty, so go for it.
I'll just say my short answer is I'm not positive. My long answer is I know that players do generally get paid minimal amounts. Um, and a lot of that pay will actually come through forms of well, like travel and stuff like that. But to get a player to come to another team, it's really going to depend on housing and jobs, like real life stuff. Unfortunately, that's where we're at in the league, where you're not making enough money to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to be paid a salary with the New York Empire. I mean, maybe they will, but like I'm going to make 100 grand with the New York Empire, so I'm going to move to New York and play with them. It's more like, oh, the New York Empire have an apartment complex, right? I don't know. They have a way to get me housing, and they have a couple hot job leads. Like I'm in IT or I'm in, I don't know, finance. They have a couple leads. They know a couple people who are in my industry. I can maybe interview with them. I can maybe get a job there. So sure, I'm going to see if I can get an interview there. If I get that job, then I'll go and play with the New York Empire or whoever it may be. That information I do know from Ben Feldman. He's kind of told me a little bit behind the scenes of like, yeah, we try to get people to come because we try to get some job leads or some apartments, but it's really hard, right? Like I'm Ben Feldman. I can't guarantee an apartment for you. I can't guarantee that I have a job for you. I know someone who might be able to get you a job, stuff like that. At this point, people still aren't like moving for for their career in the UFA, so they really don't want to uproot their entire life just to play Frisbee for a couple months. That's where we're at right now. But hopefully it definitely changes. Like with growth, that free agency and trades, all that stuff, hopefully will continue to expand.
Yeah, then expand on that from like the league's perspective. Um, Basically, a player will sign a contract with a team that sort of entitles them to X amount of pay or something like that. I'm not privy to what's actually in every player's individual contracts.
Right.
But obviously the players agree to them and the league agrees to them and the team agrees to them. And usually it's for a year, maybe two, sometimes three. In the case of Pavlianis, 6.
Yeah.
That's still wild to me. Um, but yeah, so they'll sign it, they agree to it, and then once they're released from that contract, once their obligation to that contract is fulfilled, technically they can play with any team. They are a free agent in that regard. Um, I believe players can be traded from one team to another,
Well, it
as long
happened
as
this
the
year.
receiving. Yeah, but I'm saying as long as the receiving team fulfills the original contract, I'm sure it's similar to other leagues where it's like if this
Right.
player is getting paid, X% of ticket sales with this team, they need to be making X% of ticket sales with that team.
Right. Still follows your contract.
Yep.
I think honestly at this point, contracts are not just for looks, but I think they are kind of for the shiny like look of it. But I think it also goes into the career aspect of like, hey, I know that you're in college or I know that you're starting this new career here, but like, can you guarantee you're going to be on the team for 6 years? Or do you think it's a little iffy? Like, do you think you're going to go back to med school or whatever it is? So it's like, it's more just for team reassurance. Like, yes, we can build around you. Yes, you will be here. So we will, release this other player. Right. Like you can plan for Pavianis to be in LA for 6 years because he knows he's settling down there now. Whereas I wrote this in my article for the youth, always bringing that article up. PK is on a pre-med track. So we don't know, he probably doesn't even know what his career looks like going forward. Like come next fall or next spring or whatever, he might be, I don't know, in Kansas or something. He might be in a completely different state going to med school now. So like he's not going to be on the team. He's not going to commit to that during the summer because he wants to actually be, a doctor. He wants to actually pursue his career. So he's not going to sign a contract yet. But if he were to, then he's kind of telling Minnesota, like, hey, yeah, I'm going to go to med school in Minnesota. I'm going to be available during the summers. My career is not going to interfere with Frisbee, is the extrapolation that I'm making based on what I know from a few people, what I've been told, and just, yeah, life. But yeah, that's been our mailbag. We really appreciate like 6 responses. That's been awesome. Um, I've I've been really trying to keep that going all season. People haven't really been participating. If you have even ideas of how to make mailbag better, like throw that in mailbag or just DM us. Like I'm super open to ideas. Our goal is to get your voice, your opinions on the podcast too. Like this is a community that we're trying to build in the stands, on the podcast, everywhere. Like this is we're all in this. We don't know everything about the team. We don't know everything about the sport. We want to hear about you from you too. So we're just 3 guys with a mic, but that doesn't mean we're the experts by any means.
Also, if you're ever, doing the mailbag and you feel like, oh, I don't know how to answer this question, I mean, just skip it. You don't have to answer all the questions. Um, if you just want to answer one question or you just want to go to the comment part and be like, hey, I really hate when you do this on the pod, or hey, I really like when you do this on the pod, go do that,
Absolutely.
Send it a
Yeah,
mailbag.
especially
Let
the
us know.
part where you tell us what you like. That makes us feel good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And again, 100% anonymous. I don't even know. I get the responses. I've turned off email responses, like notifications, because I don't want it to deter from someone else being honest and sharing their opinion. So I don't know who it is. I'm not going to share who it is because I don't know who it is. So yeah, send it in. Also, just like wrapping up, totally different train of thought, but you are also free to send in an article if you want to feature an article about either team, about the season, anything. Get in touch with us and we can set that up. We'd love to get guest articles going. We want to continue to expand and grow, get Strike Talk off the ground more fully, continue growing Windshield Talk. So that's another separate venue. Just throwing that in there while I'm thinking about it, but we can talk more about that at a later date because we are still in the midst of playoffs as we are gearing up for the Central Division Championship. Second year in a row, it's being hosted in Minnesota. First year ever that's being hosted against the Madison Radicals, and it's going to be awesome. So again, like we've talked about all podcast long, all season long, show up, show show up big, show up loud, wear your gear, bring noisemakers, bring signs, stand on the fence with us, sit in the stands, whatever you want to do. Just show up and come watch some fun ultimate frisbee and cheer loud for the Minnesota Wind Chill. This episode is presented by the R1P1 Network. They're doing great stuff for us along for 2 seasons now with our podcast thumbnails, our backgrounds, all of our artwork. And they're now spreading our good news too, because Ziggy just messaged me and said that he found someone in Chicago wearing a Wind Chill shirt. So he was talking about the Minnesota Wind Chill and ultimate frisbee with them. So it's so cool to see the sport spread and our stuff spread. So thank you to R1P1 for your ongoing commitment and great work. Go check them out on Instagram. And we will see you at Seafoam Stadium on August 10th against Madison Radicals. In the meantime, stay chilly and ka-chow.
Stay chilly.
Chili
Ka-chow.
ka-chow.